Now we have the slides up for Dr. Orit Gal. She specializes, her research is about strategy and complexity. And what's really interesting, went up here and discussed as well, is that she's going to talk about urban serendipity, which is ultimately about the vibe. And as she told me, and I find that really interesting. Dr. Orit Gal is coming from outside of our community, really a newbie in our community, not in her field, obviously. And and Amy Hodler was actually one of my co-chairs, was telling her, you should come, please come. And I think you're interested in just networking with the community and finding out in the ways that finding out about our work and how that could help with this urban development. And as we saw from this previous talk, that's exactly it. Like, it's a network. Urban spaces are full of networks, and the graph technology makes a lot of sense, and it's a good match. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our last speaker, Dr. Arik, and you can then go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting. As was mentioned, I am not a graph expert in any way. I'm not a data scientist. And I've been kind of walking these rooms for the last 2 days like a really curious alien, trying to see overlaps and how hopefully you guys can help me solve some problems and turn some more conceptual stuff into really operational innovations. So my expertise is in complexity-led strategic design, which is really about analyzing loads of microtrends, political, economic, technological, and cultural, pulling them together depending on the context and identifying opportunities, gaps, shifts that are coming our way. And for the last 7 years, a lot of my work, both from an entrepreneurial perspective and from an academic perspective, focus on the future of cities. And when you think about what is the environment in which we will all live, and not just us, another 1.5 billion people are going to move into cities over the next decade and a half, what will it actually look like? And when you try to think about that, you look at two things. You look at the actual trends, what is changing in terms of how we work and how we live, in our culture and our institutions, and also what is the essence, what will always remain the same, what is the essence of the city, what is the point, why did we evolve cities in the first place? And of course, a city is a really great social mixer. This is what it does. This is why we evolved to live in cities. It is all about our abilities to scale networks. We bring together loads of strangers from many, many different areas. And just by the fact of density, we create amazing opportunities and scale. And Jeffery West has led, if you know the Santa Fe Institute, work on the maps of cities and how cities scale. And of course, what is very interesting is that cities scale in superlinear formations, which means that when you double the size of a city, you more than double its innovation, its wealth, and loads of other variables. And this really helps us explain why we evolved to live in bigger and bigger cities to begin with. So the city itself is really us. As Jeffery West says, it is simply the manifestation of its underlying social network, which means that a thriving city, by definition, needs to have a resilient network, needs to have a network that, on the one hand, has stickiness. So we do have continuous interactions with different nodes, if you like, but there's also a sense of freedom in terms of association and accessibility to those networks. And the question is, how does that actually work? And one of the key mechanisms when you try to understand how that works in a very self-organized, spontaneous way, it is really about serendipity. It is all about random collisions. So another way to think about the city is a network property that is on constant discovery mode, right? We cannot do anything on our own. Any action is an interaction. And therefore, we're constantly looking, consciously, subconsciously, to connect with other people, to have access to everything that is flowing within those networks. And what is actually flowing are really three things. It is all about resources, it is information, and it is behavior. And what you see at the macro level is economies of agglomeration, which means that when people collaborate, compete, and are able to observe others in close physical proximity, you have much higher productivity. And the question is, how does that actually thrive? What are the underlying conditions? So for thousands of years, all of this worked really well, and we didn't really need to think about it at all. It just happened, and it just happened because we were strangers and we were brought into a city and we collided with other people and we needed other people for loads of everyday things. The thing is, when you look at current trends, so many of those trends seem to converge on one key element, which is the gradual removal of friction within our urban environments. And this is all due to wonderful technology. I mean, the whole point of technology is really to remove frictions, right? It is to create much smoother interactions. It is to make things more efficient and faster. So I don't need to go to my neighbor and ask if I can borrow an egg, right? That would seem weird. I can just, go to the corner shop, or better yet, just order it online and it'll be in my home in 15 minutes. I'm not going to ask anyone for directions anymore because I have a phone. I don't smoke anymore, so I'm not going to ask you for a light. All of these small friction points that used to exist as a kind of entry-level sociability are gradually removed, and these are all side effects. But the problem is, if serendipity is really a fundamental mechanism in terms of how cities, and if you like, humanity thrives, then what happens when we actually remove it? And how can we actually reintroduce it into the environment? Because again, when we look at trends and we start to connect it to different social, psychological, and economic trends, we see, again, trends that repeat themselves everywhere in the world. It's not about culture, it's not about geography, it is literally about the size of a city. And everywhere we find the urban loneliness epidemic happening. And again, the bigger the city, the lonelier people get. So it really follows the same kind of super linear scaling. Interestingly, it's not your 80-year-old neighbor. I mean, he might be lonely as well, but it is actually millennials and Gen Zs who are the loneliest. And actually, it got to such a stage that the World Health Organization has put a huge emphasis and a huge project on this for the next 5 years. And they actually equate loneliness with smoking 15 cigarettes a day, which is kind of ironic given that, if we smoked before, we were more sociable. But the question is, what do we do with that? So on the tech side, there are a lot of people who are trying to figure out whether we can do any social matchmaking. And by the way, some of the dating apps have gone into that as well. But we find that actually connecting people to become friends is much more complex than creating romantic matching. So that doesn't really work. And if you think about all the friends that you have in your life and all the connections that you've had, these are gradual processes with so many little moments. And again, serendipity and unintended elements that are just part of that story. Another problem is, again, our own evolutionary brains. And here, the problem is that we are just afraid to connect with other people, especially in terms of strangers, when there is no actual excuse to talk to them. So research shows that even though almost all of us say that we would love to talk to strangers, we assume that less than half of them want to talk to us back. So there's a fundamental gap here in terms of our fear of rejection. Now, when you need something, if you need to ask someone for directions, then that's fine. You have a legitimate excuse, and somehow that fear of rejections is cast aside. But what happens when you no longer need people? Is there something else that we can introduce? So the gist of it is really, if we don't find ways to reignite our social mechanisms, what we're going to end up with is living in very dense environments. We're talking about mega cities that are just going to explode across the globe, but they will be very sterile, and we will lose the mechanisms that actually pull us together. We will just, be confined to very crowded spaces, and you can think about the dystopian visions that that can create. So the question is, can we move into another logic that actually works with our monkey brains and everything that is happening around us in terms of technology and economics? And can we move from needs, which is one side of legitimate interactions, into playfulness, which is another side of legitimate interactions? So people seem to feel at ease if there is something that is playful, that is inviting in the area, that is another excuse to talk with people around them, not just if they need each other. So if you think about, again, serendipity as unintentionally finding resources around you, the question is, could we actually design our environment in a way that could increase the probability of these random collisions? Could we create an ambience, a vibe, if you like, that invites people to connect in whole new ways and put aside the fear of rejection? So I've been working on these issues from two perspectives. One is the micro perspective, which is all about working with designers such as Rob Vallis and a behavioral expert named Eli Rosinski, and we're trying to see if we could iterate with different social puzzles and different whimsical physical elements that we can introduce into different public spaces, whether it's conferences or museums or big, public squares, to get people to interact more. But what I'm hoping to get help from you guys today is on the macro side. And that is about how we can analyze the environment itself in a new way and understand what is it within certain environments that are just more inviting. So could we use data to analyze vibe? Now, vibe is really a distinctive emotion that we just all sense when we go into a place. So it's not about the coolness. It's not about a certain specific vibe. It is really about an emotion, and that emotion is an emergent property. It means that it is something that exists only at the systemic level, and you cannot really identify it at the unit level. It emerges out of what everyone does, and that is kind of the magic and the beauty of it. And again, as humans, we are able to interpret these type of emotions quite quickly. So you can think about different types of vibes in public spaces. So on the social side, you have an energetic vibe. So you might go into a marketplace or a place that has music or something is happening, happy streets we like to hang out in. And we immediately sense that there is something friendliness and open about it. And therefore people are more willing to interact. Or it could be the other way around. It could be just completely chilled, like a great day in Hampstead Heath when the sun is out and it's not freezing like today. And again, that is another type of setting where people really feel at ease and are much more willing to playfully interact with one another. And of course, on the not so social side, we have places that just feel unsafe, right? We sense that immediately. Or places that just kind of feel standoffish, like really snobbish. And again, you wouldn't want to kind of feel comfortable interacting with anyone. So if we can sense that immediately, intuitively as humans, can that be translated in some way into data so we can analyze different spaces along those lines? So For example, if you think about the data sources themselves, there are CCTVs everywhere. Like all the public spaces are being observed in any case, especially in London. So can we actually use, for example, video and audio data in public spaces to discern their sociability vibe? Are these places more sociable or less sociable? So on the one hand, there is loads of data, but then the question is, how do you start to analyze it, and what are you actually looking for? Now, of course, the purpose of this is not just to say that this has a great vibe or this doesn't, but actually to use it as a means to constantly improve and iterate with